Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Hello Player One podcast, where we explore the intersection of gaming and marketing and what that will look like in the future. I'm your host, Jack. Today, my guest is Allison Sturges from Genies, a company that lets users design and create avatar ecosystems. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you. Very excited to be on here and chat today.
Yeah, so to start, I'd love to just hear about how you got started with Genies, what were you doing before, and what got you excited about this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm part of the founding team at Genies. I'm currently head of marketing. I've actually been with the company since I think my sophomore or junior year of college. So I
Oh,
actually,
wow.
yeah. Um, so I actually went to high school with Akash, our CEO. We didn't really know each other that well in high school. But I kind of heard through the grapevine that he was starting a company at the time, a startup. At the time, it wasn't even called Genies. We were working on a different social consumer app. I was obviously a junior in college at the time, really interested about the tech space and startups and all of that. We both grew up in Silicon Valley, so you kind of hear about a lot of that. And at the time, I think a lot of social apps were starting to really boom with like Instagram, Facebook, even Snapchat as well. So it was just like a really exciting time. I think I remember I was actually at the gym, at our local gym, and I ran into Akash at the gym. I kind of knew who he was. I knew he was starting this company. And so I walked up to him and I was just like, hey, like, would love to work for you as an intern this summer. Do you have any open roles available? And so he kind of put me through like a full resume interview process. They told me they were interviewing hundreds of people, but I swear I was probably the only one they were interviewing. Um,
I see.
yeah, it was pretty funny. But yeah, so I ended
What
up,
was that interview process like?
uh, I created my resume. I don't even know if I've updated my resume since then, since I've been at the company the whole time. But sent in my resume. I think I had an interview with one of our co-founders, and then Akash, and it was just kind of asking me about like my previous experience and what I thought about the platform at the time or things like that. And then I got the job, worked as an intern. When I went back to school in the fall, I ended up working part time still, like I went to Duke, so I was working kind of part time at school. Worked again the next summer and just kind of stayed with the company, basically, stayed close to them. And so then when I graduated, got offered a full time position. I think at the time it was maybe five of us. Um, and I was working mostly on the marketing, kind of business development side of things. Obviously, when it's like five of you, you're kind of all doing everything. So definitely got to experience a lot of different aspects of the company at that time. And like I said, we were working on a different social consumer app at the time. I think over the years to follow, we worked on a couple other different social apps, kind of iterating off the next one. Some of them around photo sharing, video sharing. We even got into the chatbot space for a little bit as well. And then we really landed on the avatar space actually back in, I want to say it was like 2016. And so at that time, I was starting to kind of branch off a little bit more into like the partnership side of things. We were starting to work with celebrity talent and celebrity tastemakers as kind of the marquee users of our product and of our avatars. And so I was working a lot on both talent and brand side and kind of a mix of partnerships and marketing. And then more recently, over the past couple of years, transitioned, full time on the marketing side too. So that's kind of, I guess, like the evolution journey that I've had over
Sure.
the years with the company. But yeah, it's been exciting.
So, can you talk about like what led to the transition of like some of the work from the previous company into Genies? Like, it sounds like you guys were just creating a lot of apps to see what would fit with the market, right? What was it that you saw with the avatar systems and the tool that you guys were like, okay, this might be it.
Yeah. So, I think through the evolution of the company, we've always been obsessed with, the next form of communication or social interaction in kind of this digital form. And so, like I said, we were working on a different social consumer app at the time. We pivoted a few different times as we were kind of iterating, fail fast, keep iterating and learning from that. And I think over the years, that's really provided us a lot of learnings to even get us to where we are today. And even, we've been able to kind of keep that DNA intact with the company, and the culture as we've been able to grow over the past few years as well. So I think, we've been able to be equipped as we've gone through that process of just like iterating on kind of the social consumer space. And then, like I said, we got into the avatar space around 2016. I think at the time, really the only like social avatar was maybe Bitmoji, and people used to even call us like the better Bitmoji at the time.
Oh, I see.
Um, but that
Yeah.
was like what people knew about with avatars. They either knew it from like a gaming lens, maybe Sims back in the day, but there weren't many like social kind of communication, avatars out there, if that makes sense. And so we really saw avatars as a tool for communication, and really as a tool for self-expression. I think a lot of what we talk about, and even like our philosophy behind avatars, is that an avatar can be a representation of your like truest, most authentic self, kind of your inner emotions and thoughts and behaviors that maybe you don't feel comfortable expressing in the physical world. And it's really interesting because, as the avatar space got more and more popular, a lot of companies have tried creating really like realistic looking avatars. And,
Yep.
that's definitely interesting. We've never really gone that route. I think like if you're going to create something realistic, you might as well just use your real self or a photo of yourself. And so we've spent a lot of time over the years really like crafting almost the aesthetic and the artwork of the avatar. It's taken us a few years to get to where we. Sorry, is my screen freezing? um, it's taken us a few years to get to where we are today with the aesthetic, and I would say, we have the best looking avatar on the market. And so that's been a major part of the craft, is allowing people to leverage the avatar, the full customization and tools to create that most authentic version of themselves that then they can use in this virtual world, in a way that they maybe couldn't in the physical world, or couldn't show up in the physical world, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of thoughts there. So, one, when I first looked at Genies, definitely there's a unique look to it. It almost makes me think of like
Mm.
the Bratz
Yeah, yeah,
dolls.
yep.
Do you know if you don't know what I'm talking about? Like, um, it's yeah, it's definitely distinct. So, like one question I have is, like, if you can elaborate more about the avatar space, like, because I really don't know much about it. Like, how big is it? But then more about on the end user side, how are they using avatars for self-expression? I think I know what that means, but I'd love to hear you talk more about
Yeah,
like how
so I
exactly.
think like I said, there's definitely a lot of players out there that are looking towards the avatar space, or trying to build maybe an avatar world. You have like Zepeto, or you could even say like Roblox, where that is a form of self-expression. You're able to create that identity layer, and use that within those kind of gaming world type experiences. I think specifically with Genies, like I said, we've really focused on the aesthetic to get to where we are today. And really for us, we're looking to bring avatars to the masses as a form of communication, or a tool for self expression. And so, we've really studied even like Gen Z and culture, and what they care about, how they want to express themselves, and what kind of tools they might want to use to create that kind of identity. So, like I said, kind of where we're at today with our Genie Studio app. You can find it on the App Store, Google Play Store. Um, that is kind of our first experience in providing the ability for people to create their own avatars, but then also providing tools that allow them to continue to customize, and really create whatever they want within our ecosystem. We've been specifically right now really focused on fashion tools, which I think is really interesting when you look at Gen Z, and when you look at culture. Like fashion is so embedded in that generation, in how they express themselves, even in the physical world. And you see trends like, Depop or thrifting or upcycling. Gen Z wants to be unique. They want, they grew up on the internet. They have access to everything. They want to be unique and be able to stand out. And so fashion has been a form of that self-expression that you see in the physical world. And so right now, a lot of our tools are hyper focused on, um, you know, the fashion or the collectibles or the aesthetic of the avatar, but actually enabling creators and users to fully design, whatever they want in our ecosystem. So some of the examples of like our fashion tools include, being able to create and design your own patterns or textures for your assets. Eventually, even being able to like upload your own patterns and creations to design your digital fashion. We even have kind of like cropping or like stitching type tools where you could take this shirt over here and take the sleeves off of that one and combine it with the shirt over here, and allow them to like fully create those kinds of assets, and then be able to sell those, trade them, or thrift them within the ecosystem as well.
So what? How does the users, once they created the avatars and these digital clothing items, like what do they do with it? How do they show it off as
Yeah,
the
so
form
right
of
now that's
self-expression?
obviously like a big piece of like the avatar identity and being able to feel like you're fully creating something that is a one of one. The more customization that we can roll out, the more uniqueness that people can have with that identity. They'll be able to sell, trade, and thrift those items as well. So you can imagine if I created, a jacket with puffy sleeves and I uploaded my own pattern and designs, I maybe could trade that with you. Now you own that asset. You're also able to now kind of remix it or DIY it yourself. And so, as we roll out more tools and capabilities, a lot of it will revolve around how can, people create the most unique identity that they want, but then also how can they interact with other like-minded individuals around those creations and be able to share those together.
Okay. So yeah, can you walk us through, like, switching topics? Like, can you walk us through how the technology works? So there's like the app, and I'm assuming that people are taking pictures or videos of themselves, and then that gets turned into like an avatar. If so, can you
Yeah.
talk about how that
So yeah,
works?
that's not how it works. It's not taking a photo. Just
Okay,
to
great.
clarify
That's
that.
why. Yeah.
Like I said, we are a tools company, so we're an avatar tools company. And so every, component of our avatar creator is a new tool that provides that layer of customization. And so in the app currently, you're able to design and create your own avatar. We'll continue rolling out more customizations there. So you can imagine being able to even change like your body type or, right now you can like design and customize your own makeup, your own tattoos, things like that. And so you're fully creating that kind of identity. And then from there, you hop into the digital fashion tools. And so, again, right now, the platform is definitely built for people, creators, and designers, and people being able to kind of, you know, manifest their ideas into those creations. And so customization has been really key. Like I said, fashion has definitely been a key focus for us as far as the first tool set that we've rolled out to date. Over the coming months, we'll continue to roll out more and more customization and uniqueness tools, even the ability to create your own like looks or spaces or experiences as well. And then later this year, we'll also be rolling out our developer kit, which will really be the first time that developers and builders will be able to create their own avatar ecosystems as well. And so we kind of imagine, this 10-step journey of, we've really focused on the avatar aesthetic first. That is the identity. We want people to fall in love with that. The first experience that we're currently at right now is all around digital fashion and being able to create and design fashion and collectibles. and then eventually moving into avatar ecosystems and experiences where you can imagine anyone will be able to create their own avatar ecosystem, their own experiences, with Genies really being that identity layer, but also us providing the tools that would enable creators, artists, developers to build their own avatar ecosystems.
Can you elaborate on what that ecosystem, how it will be used? Let's say, yeah, if you can give an example of someone, a potential client that wanting to create the ecosystem, how they would then use it
Definitely.
for their fans.
I think we've always said, back in 2016 when we were even first getting into avatars, we've always said that the future is XR, and that we want to build our avatars to be XR compatible. And so when we think about, avatar experiences, I think, really we believe that the future even of Web3 is AR, XR compatible. And so a lot of the kind of use cases or experiences or ecosystems that people might be building, we really envision that to take place in mobile and hardware AR experiences. And so Genies, you can imagine, would be that identity layer. That's really what we're building this vision for, which would enable a developer to then create their own mini app, their own mobile game, their own AR experience that anyone would be able to tap into. Of course, in AR, you're going to need an identity layer to interact with your friends. Let's say you want to play hide and seek. It sounds childish, but let's say you want to play hide and seek with AR. You're able to interact with your friends, and they're able to show up as kind of their avatar with that identity layer. And so with Genies, really with the roadmap, looking at that as how can we provide the kinds of tools and capabilities that would encourage and allow people to create whatever kinds of experiences or use cases that they could imagine. And so there's additional tech that we're obviously looking into, whether it's object interoperability or behavior analysis, or even with like embodiment and XR compatibility. And so I think those kind of areas get really exciting as we look ahead to the future, and people being able to build on top of the tools that we're able to provide.
Got it. So one thought I had is you mentioned before that Genies is a avatar tool. It's a tools company. So and you're building the features for creators to create
Yeah.
the avatars and avatar ecosystems. Are you like? I guess I'm trying to ask this in the best way, right? Are you kind of like looking at the individual creators and seeing what they would like, or are you taking some of the requirements from potential like these bigger brands and creating features for what they would want,
Yeah.
if that makes sense?
We're definitely a creator first company. I think even a year ago, we announced providing ownership to all of our users, creators, talent, anyone that uses the platform. So anything that they create within our ecosystem, everything is minted as NFTs, and they own all of those assets. And so it's definitely very creator first. I think right now, like I said, especially as a tools platform, we are very hyper focused on the individual creators, 3D artists, and developers. Not as much on brands, I would say, at least for the time being. I think in the future, as we continue to grow and there continue to be more experiences and more tools and more use cases, naturally brands are going to gravitate towards a platform like that, where they'll want a piece of that essentially. We have worked with a wide variety of brands over the years, ranging from Gucci to, I don't know if you're familiar with Ian Charms, but they're a really well known kind of Gen Z niche jewelry and collectible brand. So we have worked with kind of a wide variety of brands to date. But I would say right now, we're definitely hyper focused on more of the creators and the artists and developers, and being able to provide them that ownership where they're reaping the benefits and creating their own brands within that ecosystem. So you can think, as we work with creators or we work with talent or we work with artists, they're fueling all of the assets that exist within this ecosystem. They're able to monetize those assets and they're able to create a brand within that ecosystem over time. Or you think about developers, eventually they will be able to build out their own avatar ecosystems. They'll be able to build out their own um, apps essentially, and that could spin off and become their entirely own brand or company. And so, like I said, I think from that lens, we're definitely focused more on the creators and artists and developers, and giving kind of that freedom and ownership, to them. But naturally, I think the brands, of course, will come into play.
So, what kind of features do the individual creators want in an avatar tools company? Like, what would they want in order to create further digital items, digital clothing?
Yeah, that's a fun question. We have right now a big focus, like I said, really is around the uniqueness and the customization of the avatar itself. um, so right now, for example, we have the ability to create and design your own fashion, and that was really, even when we rolled out our limited beta back in the fall, that was a lot of the kind of reception we were getting from our users, from Gen Z, from culture, from our, the tastemakers that we work with and things like that, is really enabling them to, design and create what they want within our ecosystem. And so a lot of the tools that we currently have provide that kind of access. As we start to roll out more of these uniqueness tools, we're even exploring things where it's like your avatar doesn't even necessarily need to be a human. If you wanted to be an animal, or if you wanted to be a
Okay.
teacup with floating arms. I don't know if you can see in my background, but there's a painting of a cloud that's floating, with floating legs and floating arms. That could be, how you want to represent yourself or show up. And so things like that, I think, get really playful and expressive and allow people to kind of innovate on that identity. And then, of course, I think as we start looking more towards the developer community and the experience side of things, it's going to be, the tools will be more so around how can your avatar interact with others around you. So maybe this would involve motion capture or embodiment. Or, like I said, with the object interoperability, how can you take an object in the real world and now that turns into a 3D object that, your avatar now owns or collects? Or even with behavior analysis, how can your avatar learn from you in the physical world if you're listening to a certain kind of artist or music, or you're interacting with friends in a certain way, or someone shares a note to you. How can your avatar, almost that feeds the avatar, and your avatar starts to learn from that and evolves from it, and even start, collecting different items based on, that kind of engagement.
Just a quick note about what it means to be a celebrity tastemaker, and then what did they do? Did they, after they created the avatar, did they just post it on the social media networks? Like, yeah, if you could talk about that.
Yeah, so back in 2016, we started getting a lot of interest from celebrity tastemakers. This was ranging from music artists to big celebrities to athletes to influencers, wanting to kind of tap into this form of self-expression, and wanting, a new outlet to do so, to kind of be playful, to entertain, to maybe even express themselves authentically to their fans in a totally new format. And so, we started working with hundreds of celebrity tastemakers. Now we own 99% of the celebrity avatar market share. And that's even led us to, our deals, partnerships that we now have with Universal Music Group and Warner Music Group. But it's really providing the access to them to kind of figure out, like, what are their needs, what are their interests, how do they want to show up. And so, yeah, a lot of it was revolving around, leveraging it on social media, maybe using it for a music video. We did, Paris Hilton did a DJ set in Decentraland. So a pretty like wide range of use cases, even using like I think Migos and Justin Bieber used it on Spotify as their Spotify canvas. So a lot of different types of use cases that we kind of explored with them in the early days. And then, like I said, I think that really gave us a lot of learnings and insights. Obviously, working with some of the bigger tastemakers in the world, wanting to use their avatars in new, fun, exciting ways. That then led us to kind of where we are today in bringing that technology and capability to the masses, which is extremely difficult. You know, it's tough to kind of take that level of customization and now provide tools that would allow people to use their avatars in that same way, or in avatar experiences, in AR experiences. But like I said, we've definitely been able to learn a lot through that experience.
So you mentioned how Paris Hilton created that the DJ set in Decentraland.
Yeah.
So how did she use the Genies tech for that? Because I thought Decentraland had its own avatar system. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, they definitely have their own avatar system. And so, you know, most of the fans at the experience, they were all showing up as their Decentraland avatar.
Yep.
With Paris Hilton, you know, we work with her. I think Fuocious, I don't know if you're familiar with Fuocious, an NFT digital artist, very well known in the space. You know, we were working with both of them at the time. They both had their own genie avatars, and they wanted to leverage their avatar. You know, I think they built a lot of the talent that we've worked with have built a real affinity to our avatar. And like I said, we've spent a lot of time and care into kind of the artwork or the craft of the actual avatar itself. And so, you know, I think when Paris got offered the opportunity to DJ a set in Decentraland for the Decentraland community, you know, she wanted to leverage her genie avatar for that experience. And so, you know, I think it was maybe like a 30-45 minute set, had like full kind of stage production and everything. You had Fuocious like flying in, you know, with wings, I think, in the sky and landing down and then doing a little dance on stage with her. So it was definitely a really cool experience. And there were even I remember there were other things that we did there too, where it was like, you know, everyone that attended the show received like a custom Paris Hilton digital fashion asset for their avatar. And then also, we had Paris Hilton's genie set up in almost like a photo booth setting where fans could come up and take a photo with her genie and their avatar. So super fun, kind of playful experience. And, you know, I think that was even around the time of COVID. And I think that was another thing that really accelerated, honestly, like our business over the past few years was the pandemic. And it was the need for connecting virtually, connecting digitally, not being able to connect with people physically. And so even a lot of the talent or users that were using our avatars at the time were able to, you know, leverage their genie in a way that they literally couldn't physically.
Hmm. Cool. Um, so I want to ask more about like because I the app is currently the Genie Studio is live, but you're only taking certain creators in. Can you talk about like who you're looking for in that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, like I said, you know, we launched our kind of limited beta back in the fall. It's been going super well, and we're looking to open that up more publicly come summer. But we really have specifically been targeting, you know, Gen Z culture. I think when you look at even every like era of the internet, it's really been culture that has adopted it to bring it to the masses. And so we really see Gen Z as kind of the leader in that space. And I think, you know, Gen Z grew up on the internet. That's what they're used to. They're used to kind of that type of accessibility. And so even some of the trends that we've seen with that is the desire to have virtual connection. And then also is the desire for freedom. And I think Web3 is an era, you know, it is the next era of the internet that provides that kind of freedom. And so a lot of our learnings thus far have really been around Gen Z and their behaviors, how they want to show up virtually, what they care about when it comes to freedom. You see them even like leaving platforms like Twitter or Instagram or uh, YouTube, even because they feel like they don't have access to that kind of freedom. And so I think that's been really interesting to kind of follow and see. But I think we've also been able to gain a lot of learnings from that as we now look into the kind of Web3 space and providing that kind of access and customization and tools and all of that. And so Gen Z, like I said, has been a really big focus for us. That's part of the reason why some of our first tools are even built around digital fashion, like I mentioned as well, knowing that that is a key behavior of Gen Z, is expressing themselves through fashion and through their identity. And I think fashion, honestly, is a really easy, this whole space is new. Avatars are relatively new, like Web3 is new. Kind of the ecosystem that we're building, AR is new. All this stuff is so new. And I think fashion, us rolling out fashion as our first tool set, provides a really tangible and easy way for people to, for Gen Z and for culture to understand, the power of kind of this digital landscape. And it's a really easy entry point for them to kind of jump into, where maybe they have a desire to even be like a fashion designer, let's say, but maybe they don't have the resources or they don't have the skill set to create physical fashion. Now they can hop into Genies, they can fully design and customize their own digital fashion here, and even be able to sell that, make money off of it, build a business around it if they want to. And then, of course, as we expand more capabilities, interact and experience and communicate with other people as well.
Do you find that the Gen Z, they're open to NFTs, or are they against it?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I would say, like, generally what we see, I think there's kind of like mixed feelings on NFTs. I think, like, NFTs, when they really got their boom, it was all around digital artwork. That was really what, like, really, I would say, digital artwork and NBA Top Shot is really what accelerated kind of the NFT space. And I think that is a really great use case for what the power of NFTs can do. Digital artists have never had a way to be able to monetize their digital artwork, and NFTs provided a way for them to do so the same way that physical artists have been able to. I think, we've gotten over the past, let's say, 2 years or so, where I think like NFTs have been so affiliated now with, pixels and graphics and trading and crypto, and really just kind of the quick flip and turn and things like that. And so I think there is kind of, I would say over the next year or two, probably a time period or a phase where like people will start to be more educated on the power of NFTs. But I think there's a lot of work to do around almost like the branding of the technology. For us, we really view it as a really great empowerment tool for creators. Like I said, you're seeing creators leave platforms like Instagram because they're not getting paid for their creations. They don't own their creations. With a platform like us and us announcing full ownership, all of our creators and users have that full ownership. They have that full access. And so that's really what we see as kind of the power of NFTs. It is the technology that's powering that ownership capability, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on that. So you're saying that like when creators create some design something inside the Genie Studio, and when it's sold, it is an NFT. Is that right?
Yeah, everything in our ecosystem.
What's the blockchain that it uses? That it's
Right now,
uh,
we're using Flow's blockchain. And
okay.
we went with Flow. I think they've done a great job of bringing, like I said, bringing this technology to the masses through, CryptoKitties and then NBA Top Shot.
Yep.
And so I think that was, a signal to us of bringing this to the masses and it being probably the more, I guess, like accessible blockchain to use for a more mainstream user. You don't have the gas
Mhm.
fees that you see with Ethereum and things like that.
Do the users know that they have their own wallet, or is the wallet tied to Genies through like an email?
No, they create their own Dapper wallet.
Okay, got it. Okay, cool. Um, there's something else I want to touch on, and it's about just like Gen Z in general. You mentioned that some of the characteristics for Gen Z is that they have a desire for virtual connection, freedom, and even ownership. What, what does virtual connection even mean? Because isn't Facebook virtual connection, or is there more to that that these traditional social media networks are not offering that they're looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, like you said, like they have a desire for virtual connection, and that's the obvious one. They've grown up on Facebook, they've grown up on TikTok. That's how they are virtually connecting. I think Gen Z is one of the like loneliest generations. They grew up through on the internet. They grew up through the pandemic. They spend time in their bedroom, on the internet. And so I think from that standpoint, that's how they get access to the world. That's how they learn new things. That's how they evolve who they are as a person. And so I think like that's a really important kind of behavior characteristic to look at when we're thinking about Gen Z, and how they might be able to leverage avatars for good and for kind of their own self-expression and kind of escape as well. And so I think that's been, a really I guess like interesting characteristic for Gen Z as kind of a generation.
Got it. And then the freedom part, yeah, like if you can elaborate on what that means, freedom from what?
Yeah, I think freedom, like that, really is what we believe as kind of the ethos of Web3. So you have each era or phase of the internet. You have Web 1, you have Web 2, and then you have Web 3. And with every era of the internet, it's always been led by a computing device. And so with Web 1, you had the computer, and that birthed the internet. With Web 2, you had mobile devices, and that birthed Instagram and Facebook and social connection. You had the camera, which on your phone, which enabled people to connect now, in a way that they had never been able to before, with people all over the world, and start getting access to that kind of information and connection with others. And so I think when we look at Web 3, we really believe that that kind of computing device that's really going to pave the way for Web 3 is all going to be around, hardware devices for XR, for AR. And so that really kind of lending itself to this idea of a need for freedom, in people actually owning their assets and actually being able to move away from kind of the bad parts, I guess, of Web 2. And I think that generation specifically, like I said, they're leaving some of these platforms where they don't have that kind of freedom. Facebook and Instagram own their data, they own their assets. They're not getting paid, whatever that might look like. Where I think that's kind of starting to create this shift, and has led now to this Web 3 philosophy around freedom, being able to own your digital assets. And I think what's really interesting too, I always say this even on kind of the NFT conversation, and the power of that is, I think we almost take for granted ownership in the physical world. You own your car, you own maybe your house, or you own your clothes. Like that's something, that's an asset that you actually, you have ownership over. In the digital world, up until now, like you've never been able to own any of your creations. If you write a blog, if you create a video, like you don't own those assets. And so I think as we do move into this Web 3 space, people want that connection digitally, but then they also want that kind of freedom and ownership.
So with the ownership piece, right? What is it, in your opinion, that makes someone feel like they have true ownership? Is it just the ability to be able to sell it to whoever they want, or is there something more to it?
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess a part of it is the underlying technology with it. You do actually own that asset. But then, yeah, it is the ability to trade it and control it and be able to sell it or thrift it or whatever that might look like. Being able to kind of exchange that asset in a way that you have full ownership. You're now giving, you're not providing that to someone else. But I think it's also about attributing it back to the original owner. So I think I mentioned earlier, some of the tools that we've rolled out, even with digital fashion, is I would be able to create a fully custom, let's say, look or outfit or shirt or whatever that collectible item. I can fully create that in the Genies ecosystem. Now, when I sell that to you, it's always going to be attributed back to me as that original owner and creator of that asset. And then you could even imagine, like, over time, that asset maybe then gets traded to someone else, but people
Yep.
will always know that comes back to me, as kind of that original owner and creator of that asset. And so even monetarily, if you're starting to build a brand within the ecosystem, you're starting to generate revenue from it, let's say, then that attribution kind of gives you that, those splits in the future too.
Got it. Okay, great. So, to wrap up, I know that your team's raised like a Series C, 150 million, right? I'm assuming to build out more features of the Genies tool set. What can people expect, creators expect in the future? What is the roadmap for the tool look like? And yeah,
Yeah. Um, like I said, we've been building avatars since 2016. I think it's a pretty grand vision for, what we are looking to build. And with any new method of communication, it is going to require firepower. And so I think, we've been able to do a really good job at staying true to our roadmap and staying true to this very long-term vision that we have. And so even back in 2016, like I said, we've been saying that, we want to build an avatar tools and ecosystem that enables people to build within XR. And so I think what we are really excited about, even looking ahead later this year, is we're going to continue rolling out more tools within the Genie Studio app. That, like I said, is kind of our mobile ecosystem, our first experience that users can interact with for their avatars. But then as we start to roll out more and more tools and capabilities, other players, developers will be able to come in, and create their own avatar ecosystems and experiences for both mobile and AR, future. And so I think, we're really excited about what that looks like. And I think even with, Apple's news around the AR glasses, and that being kind of a, potentially coming in the near future, I think that is a really big signal for this space and for, the need to have an identity layer for those kinds of experiences. And so as we continue to build more tools and release more, capabilities, it's only going to empower people to continue to create, their own avatar ecosystems.
okay. And one last question this will be a fun one. What do you
Okay.
see? What do you envision like for Genies in the company in probably in let's say 5 years because this space moves so fast. And then what do you envision the world metaverse to look like with avatars in about 5 years as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think in 5 years, assuming all goes well and continues to stay on track, even within kind of the XR space and the timing there, I think in 5 years, we definitely envision hundreds, thousands of creators and artists and developers, really being able to, build their own avatar ecosystems that, the masses, mainstream users are all kind of adopting and using at that point in time. So I think that starts to get really exciting when you think about, like, when Apple first rolled out the App Store, and now they have, probably millions of apps on the App Store, that in the future, if people are leveraging Genies, we are that identity layer across all of these different platforms, and people are able to experience those in whatever way they choose. So I think that's what we're definitely excited about, and what I hope to see in the future.
Great. So yeah, great. So thanks for joining us today, Allison, on
Of
Hello Player One.
course.
And yeah, we look forward to hearing more news about Genies, and yeah, excited for the future.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having us on. This was super fun to chat with you today.